Hello and welcome to The Book by Book, a podcast about the odd book or two we've read. I'm your host Scott and I'm not alone, Tobie's here too. This episode we're talking about Stephen King's The Outsider. I must warn you this is going to be a very spoiler heavy episode, but if that's okay with you, continue on and I'll see you on the other side. Yesterday.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, quite a sore arm today. It's just like in school, someone's gonna be dead arm sort of thing.
And it just like it's crazy. Like when you think back about when people were having jabs in school, and the kids used to think it was funny to punch you on the arm. Where it's no wonder everybody was crying. My God, if somebody punched me on the arm after this,
yeah, I think I'd cry now if someone did.
I'd be like, I'd take their head off.
So, we're doing The Outsider. Stephen King's 58th book, I believe.
Is it? It's 58th
or 51st under his name. Which
wow, not exactly. That's not including short stories and stuff like that, I'm assuming.
No, I'm guessing it includes the collection of short stories. I'm not sure if they count as a novel.
No,
I don't know. You're torpedoing my little bit of trivia, Toby.
Yeah, I read it basically the day it came out. Well, the month it came out.
We've discussed this before a few times. You're pretty into his newer stuff, like post millennium.
Yeah. Well, I'm keeping up with all of his new releases as and when they come out. I pretty much read them straight away, unless they're the short story ones. I still haven't read If It Bleeds, but I've collected his stuff, and I will continue to collect his stuff. His new one, Billy Summers, is out. Little promotion for you, Stephen. A couple of weeks.
Yeah, other books are available. Places where books are bought. Because I've read a good handful of his newer stuff, and I don't know if I'm just getting unlucky or I'm not too much a fan of where he's going. I've read Doomakey, I've read Cell, Under the Dome.
Okay, well, Doomakey and Cell, and Under the Dome. Considering I'm a Stephen King fan, I haven't really read that many of his books. I haven't read any of those ones, but I know that The Cell made it a disastrous film, and I don't know whether it's really regarded as a very good Stephen King.
So, if you give me a sec, where are we? 20. So, 2000. From 2000, it hits Dreamcatcher, Black House, From a Buick 8, Colorado Kid, Cell, Lizzie's Story, Doomakey, Under the Dome, 11/22/63, Joyland, Doctor Sleep. So I think here is where you've read
Doctor Sleep.
Everything.
I've read Doctor Sleep onwards, basically.
So you're pretty on board with his, I guess, 2010 plus stuff.
That's basically when I started collecting first edition Stephen King books.
Oh, okay. Well, that's probably the only area you can afford to buy of his, because they get ridiculously expensive.
They do, especially if you go back to like the beginning. But I was very lucky to walk into an Oxfam as a person from, I don't know, a collector at that time walked in with a box and just handed the box over the desk and says, I don't want these anymore. You can sell them to the Oxfam person. And then I was just like, I'll have them, and got the whole lot for like 200 quid. Yeah, that's a short story. Yeah, so that's I spent about £210 and I got probably 30 first editions.
Oh, okay.
Going backwards, right back to Cujo and stuff like that.
Oh, wow. I think Cujo's, that's got some value to it for sure, huh? If you're going that far back.
I don't have Salem's Lot. I really love Salem's Lot. Carrie, obviously, I don't have that.
I mean, I think those are borderline impossible, no?
Yeah.
Those are like his first 5 books.
Yeah, 2,000 plus is for
They almost seem like art collectible values than books you can sort of go out
and if you get them signed, forget it.
Yeah, I mean, for those early ones, I feel like our only chance is just coming across one in an old lady running an old Salvation Army and not knowing what she's got.
Yeah. So Outsider.
Yes, Outsider. This is sort of a crime novel for the most chunk. But I'm actually going to use the wiki because there's quite a few characters in this.
Yes, there is a fair few. And they're all they're all outsiders looking in on an incident, really, aren't they?
Deep. We've fallen into a deep hole here. I don't know if he's created his whole new world, if this being tied into Mr. Mercedes.
It's not tied in.
It's just
the
our
only way
world,
that
right?
the only way it's tied in. Yeah, it's set in our world, same as Mr. Mercedes trilogy was set in our world, in a place in our world, real world. Yeah, the only tie-in is the character.
Because the character Holly is in The Outsider, and The Outsider takes place after the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. And I didn't know she was part of that book, but I did know the name. Yeah, but I did know the name Bill Hodges. And so you told me earlier as I was reading it, like she's from the character book. There's, as far as I know, there's about 2 pages which I'm pretty sure just start flat out spoiling like the fate of Bill Hodges. I started reading, I went, I think I'm going to skip this because this just feels like it was like the character Holly on her own, like in a bedroom, reflecting about the past and how she came to be here, and XXX that happened to her, XXX. I'm like, why are you doing this? Because if you haven't read those books, I guess I didn't really read it, but it doesn't feel like it's enough to go, I understand this character of Holly now.
That's an interesting, like, should he have put spoiler warnings in his own book?
Because he's
done the Mercedes trilogy.
He's done that before. Like I was saying, he's done it with the Dead Zone.
Oh yeah, you were saying.
He talks about the mid-twist twice. I'm pretty sure he does it in, I don't know, like Dolores Claiborne and Cujo.
Yeah.
And I think, as you said, is it to show us that, hey, remember, there's kind of mystical magic shit in this world, or is it just chin stroking, pat on the back? Hey guys, I'm universe building here.
But I don't even. Is it?
I don't know if. I guess readers of this would be happy to read the Miss Mercedes trilogy. So I didn't read it, but I mean, for example, I know the fate of Bill Hodges. And by that, I mean, within The Outsider, is he happily retired, or did he,
meet his demise?
Did he die in the other books? Or is he like, hey, he's living in Hawaii, and
as a writer, does he owe it to the audience, or is it's his property, isn't it? It's his world. He gets the right to put whatever he wants in a book. He doesn't have to worry about those that haven't read it. It's their own fault for not reading it before reading this.
But I mean, she doesn't come into it till, like, I would say beyond halfway. She's a late entry into this book.
Definitely.
So anyway, where were we? In Flint City, Oklahoma, there has been a sort of brutal slaying. A young child of, I'd say, about 12 found raped, mutilated, murdered. And it's
sodomized, molested in every conceivable way. Is the most graphic detailing of a demise of a 12-year-old I've ever read.
I was sort of getting library regulars.
Yes, I was literally.
Because I remember our library policeman review.
Yeah.
And you dropped a clanger for The Outsider. When we were discussing, like, you can see why people, I don't know, this is probably, I'm going to do it again, but spoil this book, but certain recycled, if that's the right term, ideas. Or
themes.
I don't know if it feels, for me, a bit closer to say, like, I had this idea and I went left with it, but I always wonder what happened if I went and took a right turn with it. This kid is brutally murdered in a horrific way, and we don't see that. We come across this like a few days after the incident. And there's a lot of, the book kind of starts with like a police interview, like a transcript.
Yes.
And so we probably get about 10. The first chapter is broken up with like 10 police interviews, transcripts. And they basically say, I saw this guy, Coach Terry Maitland, covered in blood, getting in the back of a van, basically waving, saying, yoo-hoo, I just killed someone. But there are witnesses basically just before, not during the murder, but like, I saw that kid get into a van with Terry Maitland. I know it's him. It's a small town.
He's a little league coach and the big league coach. He is the town's baseball coach, and the town is a baseball town. Right.
These are intercut with Ralph Anderson, who is a detective or policeman. I think detective.
Detective, yeah.
He has a district attorney. Yeah, that's right. Bill Samuels is sort of talking with him because he's a district attorney, so he needs to get the arrest warrant from him. in the police station, what have you, talking about how they're going to arrest him. His son was once coached by Maitland. He's like, I want him arrested in front of the town. I want you to put, he's like, I can't go in. I'm worried. I'm too angry. So he sort of tells his partner he wants him in handcuffs. He wants the whole town, because it's during a baseball game, to see this monster being arrested.
It's
and
front
all these,
and center.
Right. And all these interviews are like, can you point out the picture? I don't need a picture. I know it's Terry Maitland. So they bust him. They drive out, go into the stadium like mid-game and stop a game and arrest him.
And the whole town is there.
Right.
They're aware that this murder's happened as well, aren't they?
You get the feeling it happened like maybe a week ago at the max, maybe 2 weeks ago at the max. But also, it's not just the witnesses. They're getting in forensics because they've found the van and the crime scene. There are blood samples, there are fingerprints, and Maitland is not just a baseball coach, he's a teacher, an English teacher. And so they said like he had to give in his fingerprints as a school precaution thing. So they already have that. Yeah, it's him. He's banter rights. I'm on their side. I'm like, well, sounds
there
like
is no two ways about it. Terry Maitland committed this murder,
and it's all of this is done pretty well. You know, I feel like King has been watching a lot of CSI, and he's brushed up on his how evidence works. I think the back of the book in the afterwards is a big thank you to basically forensics and police people. And he's like, I threw it to these people to read and say what's ridiculous and what's not. So they arrest him. I don't even think he says call the lawyer. He doesn't take it seriously. This is ridiculous. I don't know what this is, but
he's he knows his innocence.
Yeah, he is flat out playing it cool.
Yeah, and he's and there's an unnerving level of confidence to his knowledge that he's innocent that juxtaposes really well with the 100% guaranteed proof that he did it.
So at this stage, it's like I really wish I could have just read this without knowing it was a King. Just someone said, hey, take this book, coverless. But at this stage, I think we're just assuming you haven't read the book. You're like, okay, we've got the guy. Because the book, again, is kind of not a spoiler, but it's going to tell us how the next 100 pages is going to play out. But you're right, like even the police are like thrown by his lack of, not shock, but
or concern.
I've been caught or sweat. Yeah, he's literally trying to coach the game as he's being led off, I think.
Yeah.
This is sort of the instigation of the book, for now at least. So at this point, I think we're done with the police interviews.
Yeah.
You read some this morning. Did anything spike out to you?
Not really. I mean, I guess you could argue it's a little bit clunky in some places, but having a quick skim over it.
I read this book, and this morning I text Tobie because he read it a few years ago. Like, can you read the interviews? Because there's something that spiked out to me. Did it not feel like he injected, I'm going to put some character into this interview, guy, because it's a transcript. But does it not feel overdone?
Expand on that slightly. How do you mean?
I've read Dolores Claiborne. You've read it. We haven't covered it here.
Yeah.
It's good. It feels like he was trying to slip some Dolores Claiborne into Our Outsider. This guy will just start musing on something in mid-interview.
Yeah, okay.
But then the next interview will start, I've been here for 50 years. I was here when some town history. And then the next interview, you don't know my life. I've been through the Korean War and some exposition on Korean War. And these people who are in the interviews do not particularly come back. I mean, maybe they do for a small part, but they are not key characters.
No.
And it just felt like he just tried to push in character into every interview.
Like character development, you mean? Like
kind of just give us something. Oh, this guy is, I don't know, some sort of redneck guy. Oh, this is a hardened army veteran. But I feel like the interviewers knew what was going down and it was related to the murder. And it just felt not necessarily forced, just out of place. One or two would be fine, but there was like 10 interviews. And as far as I felt, every single one had, even if it was just a paragraph, if I'm in there in a police station and they're asking me, did I see this man abduct a boy, which I know
the last thing I would be saying is, do I have to, how long is this going to be? I need to get home. I've got to work in the morning on the railway tracks.
Yeah, and, everyone is
open up
super casual.
Yeah. Completely understand.
I could totally argue that small towns work this way. It's not about a lack of respect.
Counter was going to be.
It's just I've known this policeman. I was been in this town before he was born, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. People explaining their history and their reason,
kooky,
and
kooky small town folk have their quirks. It's just throughout this book, I'm going to just bring in stuff that just spiked out. And even if it wasn't spiking out that bad, the fact that it spiked out means it was a bit clunky, I suppose, or something. But so we're in the police station. Anderson, even he's like, I think he's an ultimate psycho because he's playing it so cool. Because I'm not seeing any of the signs of guilt that I should.
No, there's no twitchies, there's no eye movement, sweat, there's nothing. It's just, what are you talking about? Why would I do that? There's no, I have no reasons for being this person.
2% belief, 98%. Damn, this guy is good. Thank God we got him.
Yeah.
So if you haven't read this book, it's fine. There's a lot of detail to this, and I'm going to summarize it. Don't think that things are done quickly or simply. This book is the one thing it does well is sort of goes into this police detail, I suppose. It's
the process.
It's for the first half, it's just a really good crime book. It's like a really kind of good whodunit, if you will.
Yeah, it's a really good whodunit without the whodunit.
Kinda. Why done it?
Because because you know he done it. The proof is there.
Right. It basically says, I was out of town, not a teacher's conference, but like a teacher's trip. We went to see Harlan Coben, I think.
Yeah, this is his alibi.
Who was doing the signing thing. I was with like 5 other teachers, check with them. And this is where the cops get a bit nervous. Yeah, we didn't check his whereabouts.
Yeah.
But that's a nagging...
Because they didn't need to.
No, that's a nagging thought in his head.
Yeah.
So the lawyer comes in, and we need to give him a name because he sort of sticks throughout the book. Howie Gold. And so what transcribes is that he absolutely does have these solid alibis. He was away. They can't free him because of the evidence they have. But they are in trouble, like, okay, why did you arrest him in front of the town? It's a small town. And I think something it does well is we cut to his wife, who also deserves the name, Terry's wife, Marcy. A nice reflection of what happens next. To some level, it's going to affect their lives. Kids will always be like, hey, that guy, have you heard the rumor? Small town.
And it's not just the kids, it's the entire town. Whisper.
Right. His baseball coaching days are over. But they've got 2 young
the ramifications of pulling someone in front of an entire town and how that impacts on the people left behind, basically.
Right. And it does that quite nicely. No matter where we go with Facebook and the internet, and the 2 daughters are young enough, someone will find them and tell a new school they're at, probably.
Also, it focuses on the family of the boy that was killed.
The boy was Frankie Peterson. We sort of follow them in and how devastated they are, because we're like a week in or so, 2 weeks in, not long. And the mum has a heart attack, and the dad is just similar position, like he's just broken. And so the son, who I think is about 17, 18, 16, sort of steps up to his dad, like, I'm going to sort out the funeral for mum. You just sort of take the time you need. And so we'll put a pin in that for a while. Meanwhile, the lawyer trying to figure out what this alibi is. He's talking to the 7, and I might be doing things.
The teachers. He went to the Harlan Coben book talk with 5 other teachers, and he's talking to them about, were they there? Were they with him? Yes. Unanimous. Yes, we were with Terry the whole time. Did he get up? Did he disappear? Was there any point you never saw him? All this sort of thing. But the distance between, even if he did leave for an hour, the time it would take to get from there to there and back again it's impossible. There's no way.
You could do the trip both ways, but you'd have no time to do it. And these things go into detail. And I've got to say, it's not boring detail. It's not like a tick list of, in case anyone asks this, I'll say this. It feels very...
What it does really well is it starts the first, third. So let's take the first half of the book is broken into thirds. The first third is about proving Terry Maitland did it without a shadow of a doubt. Then the next third of the book is about proving or unpicking everything you know with evidence that is as concrete as the first third of the book that he didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's so clever, because your brain's just like, huh? Just...
At the Harlan Coben interview thing, is that it was being filmed, and Maitland basically stood up and asked a question. Bang! At no point did he slip out.
That's me.
Right. The police just can't drop it because of the fingerprints and the evidence. He's going to court. The town is getting quite riled up. This is a brutal sort of slaying of a kid. If you're intrigued by this book, we're going to get into some sort of sizable spoilers.
Yeah.
So now I would say we've given away the opening, but I think if you read the back of the book, a watertight evidence suggests that a man with an ironclad alibi did a crime in a small town. We've just sort of elaborated on that. So this is your spoiler warning. When the day comes, it's just a bit chaotic outside the courthouse, and the Peterson brother, I don't remember if we knew this was coming, but pulls a gun in the middle of the crowd and he shoots Maitland, and there's just sort of chaos. The police are sort of trying to duck down and collect him. Ralph has to take out the older Peterson brother because he's just shooting a gun in public, and he does, and he kills him. A little flash of a guy in a hoodie who is all burned, which is going to come back later. But he sort of forgets that. It's like half a line. It's just like this weird,
shadowy figure
whipping a camera around and taking in, like, there's like an overweight fat man falling on his knees, and there's this and there's that. Oh, there's a burnt man. There's this and there's that. Maitland dies.
So yes.
I was not expecting that.
Nor was I. And it floored me. It's one of those moments that I've read a fair few things, but like I've said in previous podcasts, that Stephen King has an ability with me to grab me for a section of a book where I'll stop breathing and all I will do is read. And I'll forget what is going on around me. I'll miss the train. I'll miss the bus. I'll miss whatever. Building could fall and I wouldn't even know because I am just engrossed. And that was the moment in this book where I was just like, what the beep, 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 beep. I did not see that coming.
No. Occasionally something happens in a book that is so good, I go back and read it because I just need to make sure I read that right, because it was sort of awesome. And this was one I sort of went back like 3 or 4 pages to go, let me just check, because I saw him as the star of the book. I saw him as the lead character. I guess I'll comment on this later. It feels like it takes a while for someone to take hold as a lead. Quite a while in this book after this. And I guess you could argue, actually, Maitland's not in it as much as some of the other characters this stage. I guess knowing what I know about this is a Stephen King book, the blurb on the back of the book, I guess I always saw him as innocent. Like he had these 2 kids and a nice wife. I guess I always sort of, whatever the outcome is going to be, I'm going to believe at this early stage that, and I guess because we opened up on the evidence, because we didn't open the other way around, maybe that sort of helps us come in that swing. And I think we're meant to. I don't think in this particular book, he wants us not knowing which to believe. Would you say that's fair? He wants us to be on Maitland's side. And so everything sort of needs to step back and take a breather. Detective Ralph, he's like, you're on leave. The DA guys, I want us, like, I'm not running again next year. Like, no one's cold to it. No one's like, oh damn it, there's my career. Like they're very on the case. We're following snippets of all these characters now. We've got like the Maitland wife, two Maitland kids, slightly older than each other. So there's a younger one who has slightly less understanding and an older one who's, I can feel in these very pages, sort of being forced to grow up a good few years. We also have Ralph's wife, who is a sounding board. She's going to be pretty solidly in this book. And she's the one I feel has the least character, but should have a lot more. I kind of feel like we could have had Ralph single and just soundboarding to his partner, June, a sort of Mexican sheriff, which we'll talk more on, because I have thoughts about him. We get the district attorney. We get another sheriff brought in. We get Holly brought in.
Yeah.
We have the DA guy. We have another small town sheriff who's just brought in to help out with stuff.
Go to the old people's home.
Right. It's not a character overload, but it is. I sort of wanted a cheat sheet with a little picture, just go, yep, that guy, just to remind me what they've just done in the past few pages. And so we're sort of bouncing between all the ones we've been introduced to. The youngest daughter starts having this nightmare, a shadow in the garden with a man with straw for eyes. Put a pin in that. Basically, as everyone sort of comes around and get through the shock, Ralph approaches the Maitland family, and she sort of instantly kicks him out, saying, whatever it takes.
Here.
He says, this is about clearing his name.
Yeah.
He still thinks he did it. He still has the strong belief. He sort of says, I have to, because this is hard science.
Yeah, the proof is there, and I cannot have my career end like this.
He's not meant to be on the case.
So proving that I wasn't wrong. Or if I was wrong, finding the person that did do it.
Right. For example, he finds out that Maitland, the fingerprints thing is driving him nuts. So he wants the hotel he stayed in dusted, but chances are the hotel wasn't great. Even though there's a lot of other fingerprints, we should be able to find one of his.
Yeah.
The clincher is that he went into a bookstore and he picked up a book that just never sells, or it's like not a rare book, but like the history of windmills in Derry or something. It's like, Jesus, and it costs $300 or something. What are the chances anyone else touched this book? And the guy's like, none. I've never seen anyone touch that book in 20 years. So he buys the book and he takes it to get fingerprinted. And sure enough, Maitland's fingerprints are on it. And there's this nice discussion with June, I think, and the guy who's doing the forensics saying, this evidence doesn't exist and it works against the case. You should just destroy it. And there's this nice pull of, if you've just watched any documentary on American crime, it is brutal that you don't have to bring forward all the evidence, only the evidence that works in your case. It's down to the defending lawyer to go through everything and use that. But he doesn't destroy it. He does enter into evidence. So it's like he's slowly becoming our lead character. So I guess we need to sort of fight for him.
Yeah.
There was a location where the bloody clothes were found after the crime. It's in like a farm out in Ohio. So he calls a detective, Jack Hoskins, and he's sort of on holiday. Now, I just remember him being a straight guy, as it were. He's not good or bad. It's just, I'm on holiday. Okay, I don't want to come off holiday, but work's work.
But he's blasé about his role, isn't he?
Okay. That sounds right, because I sort of double checked on the wiki this morning, and I was sort of looking at, what's the plot of this to sort of refresh me to tell it better. You wouldn't tell by my experience. And it was saying, like, Jack Hoskins is as you say, blasé. He's just not a bad guy, but not a good cop. No. I kind of don't remember him being like that. I guess I thought he was a bit pissy because he got pulled off his vacation.
Yeah, well, he's on his like basically fishing or something like that. And he's asked to go and investigate this barn or something like that. And, which he does, but he does it lackadaisical.
Yeah.
So he's the sort of detective that will walk into a crime scene and flick a cigarette butt on the floor. Yeah.
Sounds cool. I've seen. It doesn't Luther do that
in an uncool way?
Right. Like, he'll be lazy. He'll be like, this guy's got blood on him. He did it.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, to be fair, that's from the whole start of the book. But anyway, so he goes to this barn, and I guess because I was on his side, go and investigate. But like, what am I looking at? So I don't know if that's bad. It's not on his side, but like, what is he looking at? So he's just looking around and he just gets a spooky feeling. Yeah, he gets this feeling there's a guy behind him and he just freezes. He puts his hand, he feels a hand on the back of his neck, right?
Yeah, touches him.
And then he just sort of like unfreezes and like takes a dive forward and turns around and there's no one there. So I guess the guy did sort of do a forensics check. He's like, there are definitely Maitland's prints there, but there's another set of prints which are just blurry. I think he says, this is one thing I didn't get. He says, it looks like they're old fingerprints.
Yeah.
I didn't know if he meant the fingerprints have been there for ages or the fingerprints of an old person.
No, I'd say have been there for a while. This is where it starts to become very Kingish.
Yeah, so everyone is having a dream or a vision dream, and the man with the straw for eyes is used.
Mm-hmm.
And we basically just, yeah, like you said, we go king. He goes full king. Jack has a sort of dream visiting by this man, and this guy is, I don't know if they're telepathically speaking or
yeah.
And it's basically like he's itching this lump on his back. He's like, it's just sunburn, it's just a mole, but this presence basically says you've got cancer, and it sort of implies he gave it to him, right, when he sort of touched his neck in the balm. So it's like, you're on my team now, says this shadowy figure. I'm going to come back, but your only chance of me taking this cancer away is just
to do my bidding.
To do my bidding.
We've also, this shadowy figure also visits the daughter, doesn't he?
The youngest daughter. But because she's the youngest, it gets like, no, she's just having nightmares because of this horrific thing that's happened. Meanwhile, they hire private investigator Holly Gibney.
Holly!
And she is basically to look into Maitland's movements when he was away. I guess for the last year. They went on holiday, check out what was he doing. And so we start tracing the history of the van. Things are not necessarily tying together, but there's like threads of like, okay, so Maitland took a holiday in Daytona, and the van was also in Daytona around this time. What the Maitland wife doesn't know is that the detective still believes it was him.
Yeah.
There's not enough. He just, as we said before, even though he's playing it as let's do it to clear his name, he kind of just wants the truth. And for now, his truth is just
he did it.
But how? So what Holly finds out when she's speaking to the hospital where the father is, is that in her investigation, at least, she finds out there was a very similar killing about a guy who swears
an orderly, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I think there's this case and it goes further back. But like a down and out, if you will, was accused of the same thing, but he had less alibis and he was a less believable character. So I think he got the chair or what have you. And it sort of brings it back to this orderly at the hospital. And we sort of find out that Terry Maitland bumped into this orderly and they fell over and he got scratched by him. And if you remember earlier, that this bouncer was scratched. In the meanwhile, the wife, is it the wife? No, it's not. It's the detective's wife, Janine, the one I felt was a bit undercharacterized, sort of turns around in her living room, and if you will, the outsider is there, and he's just like flat out, F off. Tell your husband to drop the case. And this guy, I think that like the kids have been seeing more visions of him. Maybe the wife has dreamt of him at this stage, and they call him like, it's like he was made out of Play-Doh, but he wasn't finished.
Yes.
I think at one point he has the visage of her father. He looks like someone tried to build their father out of Play-Doh, but it's not him. So this outsider is getting stronger in their visions, and now it's appearing to adults, and it's saying like, back off, just drop it. I guess as we know, they're getting a bit closer.
Yeah, they're getting closer and closer every time, especially with Holly's presence.
So Holly, you can tell us about Holly, because
Holly is one of my favourite Stephen King characters. I think she is so well realised, and I'd read the trilogy, the Mercedes trilogy, and then when that finished, I was gutted that Holly was gone. So as soon as I found out that the outsider was there and that Holly makes an appearance, I was so excited by that because she is such a great character. And I think you had an issue with...
So, not knowing Holly, she almost seems, I'm not OCD, but not officious. What's the word I'm looking for? When it's like...
fastidious. No, something like that, yeah.
And at times it felt out of place. Again, like the dialogue at the beginning, it just spiked out. So like Holly is like a filmophile.
Yeah.
Like she loves films, but it just felt within this book, some of the times and places they got that into this character felt massively out of place. She's calling up the lawyer, because I think that's who hired her. And it's like, how are you? Good. I just watched Paths of Glory. I think it's Kubrick's best work. A lot better than The Shining and Full Metal Jacket, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, about that brutal rape, murder from a kid.
Yeah.
And it just felt like, would you start yabbering on when you know you've got to talk about, you're talking to, like, on the speakerphone, for example, with a woman whose husband was shot, who's being accused of like child rape and murder, and you're just sort of not ad-libbing, but sort of drifting your conversation to the film you watched that night. It was like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, like you say, you haven't. It'd be interesting to see where you stand on this after you've read the Mercedes trilogy, because that's very much what Holly's about. She is tangents. She is nonsensical. She doesn't, but she's autistic.
Certainly
understanding that about her and the depths of it, because she would, at the beginning of the Mercedes trilogy, she basically doesn't talk. She doesn't talk to anybody. She just shuts down and is this person, a shell of a person, just chain smoke cigarettes. And Bill, her relationship with Bill brings this detectiveness out of her, and that's when she starts to she takes over.
It's like it takes her autism and it turns her into it's a superpower. She can her autism and her way of viewing the world. So again, like, this is probably a Mr. Mercedes trilogy spoiler. Like, we sort of get the sense that she's taken over the business.
Yeah,
but they are finders keepers, but they are small time. She does not deal with this sort of case normally.
No.
She is like people who skip bail. Is sort of like a big, not missing persons, but just.
So there's a reluctance to her to expand her, her worldview. She's very happy in just her small community, solving her small case crimes. So to be pulled out into this world is probably another reason for why she tangents off on things, because it's a defense mechanism.
Right. And I guess from her point of view, it kind of starts off as a small case. There's a man, as far as we know, he went on these holidays. Can you just check up what he did on those holidays?
Yeah, because she lives close to these areas. And
right.
It's easier for her to get to. But that's a Holly thing, in that she'll take something like that, but once she's got that bone, boy, she does not let it go until she's chewed it to death. And that's such a great character. She's so good. I can't wait for another book with her in.
It's certainly interesting for me to go back and read it knowing how she turns out, as it were. Like I was saying, no, it doesn't feel like there's a lead character emerging for quite a while in this book.
No.
And I guess there's nothing wrong with that. I just expected it to, because I started off with Maitland feeling like Maitland was the lead, and I think that was purposeful because of the he did.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we're jumping around. I mean, for sure, the detective. I guess he doesn't, if you will, take up screen time or page time. Like we can be very split with other people, and other people are doing stuff without his interference, if you will. He's not our vessel through the tale, is he? Really, the detective is a collection of. I guess he's our voice of reason, in a way, because he's that evidence I can't ignore. But the evidence speaks for itself.
Yeah,
they sort of joke about, well, maybe he's got a twin brother.
Yeah,
and throughout he's always talking to his wife. And that's why I feel like she's a bit hard done by.
Again, I guess the idea of her is you do see that there are some people out there that literally are just a sounding board, and her existence is to serve him in an old-fashioned, antiquated way. That's basically her life, is to keep the house, look after her husband, and be a soundboard for his highly regarded work. And that may be why there isn't much more depth to her, because there just isn't any more depth to her.
Brutal, Tobie, because this is set in modern times. He talks like this didn't necessarily spike out as a bad thing, but it always spikes out to me when I'm reading the current book that is using pop culture that is still relevant. Like going back, I think I read one of his older ones fairly, and he will do it, but it's stuff from the past which is now classic or nostalgic. But in this, he talks about, I was just on HBO, we're just watching Ozark on Netflix or whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a modern book, and he's setting it in the modern now. But for me, I feel like these things always spike out for me.
Contrived.
No matter how well it's written, just anything modern
Yeah. Completely. I totally understand where you're coming from there, because you especially as you focused on predominantly his retro books, his early career, which when he's referencing pop culture and stuff in them, which he does quite frequently, it fits within the historical view of reading a back catalogue of King, whereas he's doing what he's always done, but it just jars because you're used to.
Right. Like in it, you know, they go to the cinema to watch like the Mummy or the Wolfman or something. But it's not just that's the, like, you know what I mean? It's setting the period and reminding you, you know, not subtly, but I mean that does play into it, but it sort of reminds you of the era they're in.
Yeah.
Like in 20 years' time, when he says, "Oh, we're watching Ozark."
Yeah.
What people are making it, you know, and you never know how things are going to date.
Yeah.
You never know if it's going to, I don't know, like, what's Ozark? Or like, oh, okay, it's like
Netflix.
There's like I said, that's a personal thing I have.
Yeah, completely understand where you're coming from.
Feel like I've read other books where it felt like they'd left a gap and they were trying to figure out, like, insert pop icon here, depending on when the book is released. Pick the coolest thing we can think of later. But so anyway, I forgot what point I was on. Holly basically says, I need you all to come together to tell you my findings, and I need you to watch with an open mind.
That's it. Oh, so just.
And so I'm going to keep saying it because I do feel like I'm definitely just sort of, even though this is probably like an hour in at this point of us talking, I've skipped a lot of detail, a lot of how she finds stuff, a lot of what and why, a lot of interviews. But so she gets everyone together. She's like, just have an open mind. And she plays them some old 70s.
Can I just jump into
yes, please do.
This is something that Holly is. She comes to things with an open mind because of what she went through in the Mercedes trilogy. So what you're about to be revealed to you in this podcast and in the book at this time, she is used to this. She is used to working in a King world.
Okay, so this is where sometimes the Times do, like we said with Kujay, the reason why this is referenced, if you know it, is to give you a wink that magical, mystical, monstrous things can happen in the world. It's not our reality. This is a reality where Pennywise, the dancing clown, can exist, which is, you know. So she plays them this sort of 70s luchador Mexican sort of cheesy action horror film.
Yes.
And it's sort of, I think they call it El Cuco or Chuco. C-U-C-O.
Yeah, El Cuco.
It's like a Mexican boogeyman. I think within this film, it eats bad children and sort of becomes them. It's like a sort of a doppelganger, but not just for one person. It scratches you to get your blood, and then it can slowly become you, your DNA, your blood. And the film is irrelevant. It's like a sort of cheesy action, but she sort of stops it and says, did some of that seem familiar? Forget the fact it's a film and all the details. And I guess there's the myth of this thing. It would be the equivalent of you saying, oh yeah, I don't know, all these people keep like dying and they've got two holes in their neck and they've got no blood and I don't know what's going on. And then me saying, have you heard of Dracula? Again, huh? What's that? Yeah. There's the myth of Dracula. Yeah. This is where June Cable steps in, his sort of Mexican partner. And I guess I can talk about him here. He did not feel written well.
Oh, this is the guy that's been touched. This is the guy that's touched.
No. This is his Mexican. This is his like police chief partner, and he's Mexican.
Okay. Yes. This is. Yeah, you're right.
And I guess I haven't talked about him much, but he is there. Like I said, there's a good handful of characters. It's not that he's doing nothing, but I don't think he takes key at any point.
No.
I'm feeling he's there because now him being Mexican can elaborate on, oh yeah, I remember when I was young we used to watch these movies. He does not feel written well. At the end of every fifth sentence, si señor, or ay caramba, it really felt he just sprinkled some cliche Mexican stereotypes into his dialogue because he speaks perfectly good English. He's been in America like all his life, and this was another thing just spiked out. I don't know. I don't know anyone who just doesn't say yes. You know what I mean? I don't know. It just felt like a
idiosyncrasies.
A Simpsons satirical over the top. It's just. I don't know if it's overdone. It's just done in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Personally, that's how it felt for me because it just came at the end of like sentences. Si, senor. Ay, caramba. Those two sayings for sure made a lot of appearances. But so he goes on to say, "Oh yeah, the myth is different. I sort of forgot all about that as growing up. It's almost a silly thing, like a sort of Grinch, not a Grinch, but like a Santa, be good or he'll get you, boogeyman." Here's something this book does really well. No one really believes her, and there's a cool scene where Holly pulls the detective aside. So we're pushing into the climax now, and she says to her, "You keep talking. Suppose, imagine if. I really need to move forward. It doesn't matter if you believe it. We're moving forward with you taking this as what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I need to stop hearing you saying, suppose it is this thing, right? It's just important to her. I think I've done enough for the King interviews, and regular listeners might know, like, not that I have a slight with, but people get on board with the supernatural pretty quick in his books.
Yeah.
When we did The Dark Half,
yeah,
they literally jumped to the supernatural, was like 10 minutes. It just felt like, you know what I mean? Like one day later.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's the supernatural, right? And there's a few where it's just for the sake of getting on with the book. This one felt well done because the detective and a lot of them are just like, well, yeah, I guess it's a guy thinking, like a crazy guy thinking he's the Chuko, or a guy pretending.
Yeah.
And this one felt the most strong characters with physics grounded in our reality, not jumping on the ghost supernatural monster bandwagon. I appreciate it for that.
No, I'd agree with that. He is very resistant to the old idea of the supernatural, and he laughs it off repeatedly throughout this section, and he's almost disgusted with the idea.
Yeah, he was saying, like I was saying about people's reaction to remember that a kid was slayed and raped, and an innocent man at least was shot dead, and he had to shoot the kid who was doing the shooting. Like he shot a 15-year-old, 16-year-old boy not that long ago. Yeah, like you said, are you shitting me? Like, come on, this is real stuff.
People were dying.
The outsider living up to his name has really stayed on the outside.
Yeah.
Any time we've heard him speak, it's very like pretty much our characters have had their back to him. It's like he stayed in the shadow, and that's pretty cool. And I think so. There's all these little clues that are tying in. I guess I can let go of all of the police stuff now. Whether the policeman believes or not, we as the reader do.
Yeah. We're fully on board by this point. Along with Holly.
June is in the belief. The others are, whether they believe or not, they believe that this is where the killer is going to be, no matter what they encounter. And like I said, Holly has this cool speech. At least a detective, you have to believe for the sake of the next 48 hours if we're going to get through this.
Yeah.
Tobie, we are unfortunately running out of time. I've gone into far too much detail from the beginning, and now we're hitting the exciting climax. We're running out of episode time. The show builds to a climax with most of the characters, and I'll say that they don't all survive. And the showdown with Okuko leads them down into a cave. Is that all right to skip that way and keep talking about what the outsider as a whole is, rather than detailed telling, spoiling? We do actually get to meet the outsider. What did you make of that?
Would you say there's an element with the outsider in that he almost tries to make them feel sorry for him because he is one of a kind? He is like, he's only doing what he needs to do.
I guess I did.
It's not like he's doing it purely for evil's sake. He's just trying to survive and carry on his living.
I never felt sorry for this child rapist murderer.
No. You can see where I come from, though. Like, if
I guess it tries to justify itself.
Yeah, if
it sort of throws, you do what you need to survive.
Right. This is what I need to do.
Yeah.
And the reason he causes so much pain on that boy is because
Pennywise. Everyone knows what Pennywise's deal is.
Yeah, so it feeds off the fear, basically.
Yeah,
And the more fear it feels, the more feed it
and
gets.
sadness and misery. I think they talk about
Yeah.
when he visited the daughter. It sort of like wanted her to cry. They sort of discuss, and they just sort of get this inkling that it feeds off sadness and pain, and just that's why it does what it does,
exactly
right?
that,
Like it's not just that it sort of attacked and abused this boy. It's that the aftermath of someone else's family getting torn apart, and in the past when they weren't lucky enough to be like a standing citizen as Maitland and have an airtight alibi, like because the previous one had an alibi, but it was just his mum, and it wasn't enough. So I think it said
it's like mopping the gravy up after a roast dinner.
Right,
you've had the main course, and now you're just filling the rest of yourself up with the mop up.
I guess we never get the definition of what he is. Just I used to be known as the Native Americans called me this, and over time they called me this, and in 100 years they'll call me this sort of thing. What do you feel about the history and the myth of the El Chuco? It plays it nicely, or it's out of the blue? And for me, I've never heard of it before. It just stayed in this sort of don't know enough about it. You know what I mean? Even with the explanations and the film, it's like I don't feel like I could now, like I could Dracula or like the Mummy, tell someone about it without going, that's sort of this thing.
Yes, I need to double check that it's definitely true, but I'm pretty sure it is. It did feel a little bit sort of.
It just felt like Stephen King went, "Oh, I've heard about this sort of mythical Mexican boogeyman. Insert here." Yeah,
that's exactly it. That's what I'm trying. There's a better way. There's a way I would try and put it, but I can't think of what it is.
Those passages where they described him could easily be removed, and you could say, "There's this town called Derry, and some spoiler here for it. There's a town called Derry, and this sort of clown thing was feeding on the fears of children. And I think one of the eggs survived, and this is like the offshoot.
Yes,
exactly. Still fit in.
Coincidental, not coincidental. Not contrived either. There's a word that begins with C. I'm sure that sums that up briefly, but I can't remember what it is.
I guess it just fills in the book. Insert explanation here. But it felt so neatly done that, like, the example I gave was you could remove it and switch it and not have to go back and re-edit mass sections.
Yeah, completely agree.
I mean, maybe it is like a huge thing. It is like Dracula-sized fame within Mexico. It just hasn't sort of, branched out into this world. So they do ultimately show down with El Chuco, and more spoilers here. But, the good guys prevail.
Yeah.
They basically strongly believe that they killed it. And the book really implies they killed it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll talk about this in a minute. And then there's just a wrap-up, which is quite nice, because it sort of follows on from our world logistics of stuff. So now there's like police on the way, and the detective is like, you need to disappear, because I can't just say there was a monster. Like I need to find a way to explain it. So he comes up with a sort of reason why that is going to satisfy, I don't know, not forensics,
the general public.
Yeah.
Without upsetting the world's ecosystem and balance.
Right. So the book kind of just plays out by wrapping up everyone who's left alive. Fair to say the end? Yeah,
I would say that's a very good surmise.
Did you... I got to say, I hated this finale in the cave.
Did you?
It was like, suddenly the outsider is just talking like a regular fella. The stuff he was kind of saying was all right, but he was just in the shadows for so long. I'm not saying I wanted it to turn into some sort of alien spider.
No.
But it also gets taken out by like a sock of quarters.
Which, again,
it's fine for that to play.
You saw my reaction to that.
But I don't know what that says about this book, that the big El Chuco monster that has survived hundreds of years can get beaten by some quarters.
It's kind of like he's going through a gestational period, isn't he? That's what he's doing.
It's true. He's sort of becoming
he's building himself up. So if you were to take a sock full of quarters to something that is
something cocooning,
or a Lego building, which is basically what he is, made out of maggots
and
like
the
that,
cave
and
in.
smashed it together.
But
I do understand where you're coming from, though. I was a little underwhelmed by the ending.
And because, like I said, they did such a good job at keeping him in the shadows.
Mm.
Yeah, and I guess very, to compare it to the climax of Pennywise, Holly, the outsider, is saying what it is, and I'm eternal, and Holly can sort of irritate it by saying, no, you're just like a pervert. You're like an impotent thing, you that's why you prey on kids. That's why you have to disguise yourself, and sort of they sort of battle back and forth, and she sort of gets under its skin, which is what makes him lunge.
Yeah.
And is ultimately his undoing. I guess, I don't know, it was like, I was pretty underwhelmed by this.
It's tricky though, isn't it?
Of the outsider.
It is. I mean, it comes back to all of the endings in King's books, isn't it? He's notorious for.
But they would have a play-in, when they take out Pennywise, it's like, I'm making this up, but like, remember that lucky coin the kid had it all the way through the film he's playing with? Like, the belief that this coin is more than a coin is what defeats it, sort of thing. So there's some tie-in and play-in. Whereas this was just a physical battering.
Yeah.
Like they could have sent in a biker gang with bats.
No.
Like I think because Clear was a great thing for you, was a callback.
Yeah.
To a complete set of another trilogy.
Yeah. It's just that. Yeah, just that. It's a reference to the Mercedes trilogy, to Bill Hodges, to Holly growing up with Bill Hodges and developing as a person. And I just remembered when she drops that thing, and just like going, go on, girl.
I think I would be where a lot of people were in how I rated this book. That it started off great, and then it just went King. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it. I was really, I wish this could have been one of his crime ones, because when we find out how the impossible alibi works out, it's like magic, if you will.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What would have been super nice, if we could have kept it forensical, and in our world, like, what he did was he drugged 7 people and then set all their clocks back, and some ludicrous thing or something. And that's not what he does.
No.
You know what I mean? It's
very King. It's very horror. It's very, so you say, supernatural.
It's almost like it's King. You should know better if you're reading it at this point.
Yeah. It's not sold as one of his crime novels, hard crime cases.
No, and I guess this was written around the time he was doing his hard crime ones, so I'm guessing he had that inkling. And I wonder if there was he was doing the hard crime ones, and he felt this pull of the supernatural. Said, no, I'll just do that later.
Now, I might be wrong in saying this, but from what I understand, Holly wasn't originally going to be in The Outsider, and it's only after finishing the trilogy and then starting to write this, and he got to the point in the book where she comes in, and he was just like, Holly should come into this, and that's what I'm going to do. And he brought her back into it, and because he really likes Holly, he's enamored with her as a character quite heavily. So, as am I.
I think I have a friend who saw the TV show, and he said, "I'm done with King. I can't. It just does the same thing."
Yeah,
he was like a big fan of the It films, so I'm guessing he came off watching those two. And went on to this and just thought, this is just It rewritten for adults.
Yeah. I would agree to some extent with that.
When we read The Library Policeman, you sort of said, if there are people who think he's a hack for reusing ideas, this is the prime example they'll go to. And not that you agree with it, but you can totally see why, and you can't really argue against it.
Nope.
I said it's like he's writing It or The Library Policeman, and he has 2 paths he can go down. And then 10 years later, he still had the itch to see where would this have gone if it wasn't a little boy outside the police station, but a policeman.
Yeah.
Like, what would an adult deal with these situations?
Yeah.
It was kids dealing with it. Well, I guess it was everyone dealing with it. But this is sort of, the same base idea with a new path.
Yeah.
I don't know about the El Cuckoo thing. I guess I should have done research. Is that real?
With the El Cuckoo, I believe it is a myth.
Because maybe that's just something he's always wanted to do his own version of. And
I do agree with them. There are massive elements of this that you can say, well, this is this, and this is this, and this is this, and this is this, and it's just a pile of all of that in here.
Entertaining.
Definitely.
Once we hit that switch, I'm not gonna lie, towards the end, I was reading to just finish it. I think once it's just established that it's a monster, and for us, the reader, there's no doubt. And I would say we get to halfway before we start really believing that it's supernatural. Even with the kid's dream as the man with the hay, still it feels like it could just be a representation of the nightmare situation.
Yeah. Losing your father and everything. Yeah, totally. And it's just like I almost went in earlier on about Dr. Sleep. You know, I referenced Dr. Sleep. It's like this. I guess the fact that it's all set in a similar, you know, the universe, this king verse and everything like that, and in which this magic or this supernatural element exists, then there will always be similarities. But
because I mean, there's no shade to it, because you seem like you really enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I did.
You know what I mean? Like,
generally,
we went to media school together, right? Like the whole idea of an auteur, correct me if I'm wrong, is they're just trying to make the same movie. Is that right?
Yeah, stylistically in theme and the mise en scène. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you were disappointed by the ending, but you enjoyed the first
climax
2/3.
I love the beginning. The Maitland thing, the twist where he dies flat out, like, damn.
Yeah.
Because I kept thinking, well, maybe he's going to come back. Maybe like I said, I went back to read it, and I was so sure that he was a star. I was like, maybe they'll get to the autopsy and they'll cut him open, and he's going to be like worms.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the other Maitland is out there, and also because I know that Patrick Bateman plays him in the TV show. Does he get written out? Like his face is the poster. So that's either going to be a great twist for the show.
No,
it's for me.
No.
Or to be fair, it's like that actor is going to play the outsider. Like, because in this, the outsider sort of has the essence of him, but quite quickly sheds Maitland as a visual.
No, I think it's exactly what you're. It's exactly this, doing exactly the same thing that the book does, but it's taking Bateman and putting him front and center in all the marketing material, and then killing him off within the first 2 episodes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then he directs it, I think, the rest of the series. So he goes behind the camera and takes
nice.
it from there. Yeah.
I think I've heard good reviews.
Yeah. I want to see it.
Did you know anything about The Outsider and the twists of any of them before you came into it?
No, I had an idea. Well, other than the fact that it's Stephen King, and I knew it'd probably be supernatural, I didn't know anything about. I reacted the same way that you did to most of the key elements. They shook me to my foundations at times. It's like, what the hell? I really, it was. I read again, and I say this pretty much at the end of all of our podcasts. I would recommend it. I really enjoyed it. Definitely. I'd like to see more Holly though. 100%. I'm down for as much Holly as you can send me.
Do you think we will see more of her?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, it sounds like she's hit a nice arc. That if you didn't see any more of her, it's like, because she went from being someone who couldn't talk and who was sort of unfunctioning in society by the sounds of it, someone exactly who can go down caves and batter other beings to death.
Yeah, it's exactly that. She's her arc is awesome in the Mercedes trilogy. We should definitely read those next, viewers and Scott.
All right.
Get on the Mercedes trilogy. The fact that you were saying earlier on about Holly talking about films felt out of place. That is probably a setup for the reveal of her having heard of this El Cuco, because she watches
that's true.
Loads and loads and loads of really old films. That's her thing.
She's a cinephile.
Yeah, so that's why she knows about this, is because she watches obscure.
It does tie in. Yeah.
Foreshadowing, I think they call it. Well, there we go. A breathtaking novel of suspense. The Outsider. Cool.
All right.
Okay then.
Hey, listen, listeners. like and subscribe once in a while.
Because, yeah, please.
Yeah, I don't... just send a thumbs up. Send a thumbs up once, just so we know. It's a very low subscribership, and I'm happy with that. I don't care about that, but just let us know. I don't know, something. Give us a thumbs down. Give us a thumbs down if you have to.
If you've made it this far and you hear this section, put in the comments, we made it this far. This section.
Yeah,
we're going to carry on doing these, even if we have no viewers and no listeners.
Well, we got this far with no viewers and listeners. Hey, I'm going to wrap it up around there. I want to thank you for listening and hope you enjoyed. Join us again next episode, and until then, support your local bookstores and have a great day. I would just jump into The Outsider. I don't think I'm going to go quite into the detail we normally do.
Yeah.